Welcome back to the Lessons for Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Tim Ahlenius, VP of Strategic Initiatives at americaneagle.com. As you know, this is the motivational poster in your ear and possibly on your screen if you're watching on YouTube. In this episode, we're going to be diving into how did we get here, reflecting on 2022 and a glimpse ahead into 2023 and beyond. I'm so thrilled to be joined by a very special guest, none other than the CEO and co-founder of Pantheon, Zack Rosen. Zack is the co-founder and CEO of Pantheon, as I just described in my intro of him, and he leads the mission and strategy and long-term vision of the company and the continued improvement and evolution of the product into an agile digital experience platform for enterprises. Zack pioneered the first large-scale Drupal website for the Howard Dean campaign in 2003, which helped revolutionize the business model of politics from offline to the internet. In addition, Zack has successfully co-founded a variety of organizations over the past 15 years. Chapter 3, a full-service web agency specializing in Drupal development, Mission Bicycle, a San Francisco-based bicycle manufacturer, and California YIMBY, yes, in my backyard, an advocacy group that is working to solve California's housing crisis. Under Zack's leadership, Pantheon continues to grow rapidly while retaining a focus on its talented and passionate team, loyal customer base, and the guiding mission of furthering the open web. Zack, welcome to the show today.
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to be here.
So that is quite an impressive bio readout that I just did for you, Zack, and just kind of curious as we before we dig into fully the episode aspects, just I got to ask about at least two of the three organizations that you helped co-found over the past 15 years. Mission Bicycle, based in San Francisco, bicycle manufacturer. Talk to us a little bit about just kind of how that came and how you got involved in co-founding that.
So my co-founders at our digital agency, Chapter 3, so Matt and Josh, started a bicycle manufacturer in the conference room of our consulting company. And it was a hobby project that got completely out of control. And we recently sold the business to New Wheel, which is an e-bike. It's the largest e-bike retailer on the West Coast. And we built custom. You come in with a dream of the bicycle that you always wanted to have, and they were all built to order. And it was a pretty amazing experience for our customers. You could pick out all the components, and we'd powder coat and do all the manufacturing here in San Francisco.
Wonderful. That's sounds like a very fun hobby that turned into a fun business right away, right? So it's amazing how hobbies can kind of get out of control like that for entrepreneur minds and bloom into something, which is great. And then just secondly, a little bit just about California YIMBY and just your involvement with that.
Well, you may have heard we have a housing crisis here in California, and it's unfortunately the result of a set of policies that have been built over the last 40 or 50 years, but essentially to make it illegal to build housing. In San Francisco, it's illegal to build more densely than a single family home up until recently in 76% of the land area. The natural, when you have these policies, you make it illegal to build homes, and then you have an amazing economic boom as California continues to have. That's a recipe for a housing crisis, and that's exactly what's happened. I worked in the tech industry for a while, and I always felt that the tech industry, we didn't create the policies that are colliding with the economic boom that are creating the housing crisis. But I do think we have a special responsibility. We're here building these companies in California, drawing people into the state, and the impact of this is horrible. I mean, it's you have teachers who are teaching while homeless. You have our employees at the Mission Bicycle at Pantheon. It's incredibly difficult to find housing, and if you're a kid growing up, anywhere in the country today, and this is a very sad fact, the highest rate of being in poverty in the state of California in real terms, adjusted for cost of living, because of the housing crisis. Mm-hmm. And the fix is very clear. Like, we actually know exactly the policies we need to change to solve this. It's all self-inflicted, but it's a matter of the politics. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, a couple friends, so Brian and Brian Hanlon, who runs California YIMBY, and myself and my friend Nat Friedman helped get it off the ground. So Nat and I help with liftoff and fundraising and on the board. Brian really built the team and does all the work. And his team has been, I'm immensely proud of what they've accomplished. I mean, they are on track to solving the housing crisis in California. They've passed probably 16 really important pieces of legislation through the state legislature. Most recently, we're getting into want territory, but they legalized ADUs, accessory dwelling units. They legalized lot splits and duplexes and stop parking minimums. They all really groundbreaking policy they're passing. You know, it's going to take a while to get homes built. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. But I'm actually very optimistic, building on this, that we're very much on track, and you can kind of see the end game to solve the housing crisis. And I'm very proud. You know, the tech industry really was instrumental in that. I mean, most of the funding and the leadership, and it's been a really effective partner, I think, of the policy and political folks who are leading that effort.
Wonderful. I can't say how much it's just great to hear the partnerships created between you and the other members of it, but also addressing that type of a need in California, where it is, you know, very well known that that is a problem that needs to be addressed. And just kudos to you for all the extra things you do besides your day job, which is CEO at Pantheon. And so I just want to again just thank you for being on the show today. I had the pleasure back on episode 28 in March of chatting with Josh Koenig, and so just we appreciate you jumping on the show again here on episode 45, and I think we're ready to kind of dig in and just maybe talk a little bit about your history of kind of co-founding Pantheon and the reason for that. And then let's dig into a little bit about reflecting back on this past year and what we're seeing.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So what kind of inspired you to get started with Pantheon and bring that to light? And you know, you and Josh co-founding from that perspective, what's that, just, you know, the need and the problem that you saw and why you created Pantheon?
Yeah, so I'm very lucky. You know, Josh and Matt. Dave is a new guy. I've only worked with him for a little over a decade, but Matt and Josh, we worked together, I think 18 years now, 3 companies. So we're kind of like, me and Josh are kind of old married couple. I know what he's thinking before he does, and same for him. And you know, a lot of startups, I think, have this really age of trials in the beginning, trying to find product market fit. We were very lucky we didn't, because we were actually hired as consultants to build Pantheon like almost a dozen times before we started the company, literally, like the whole product, and like first version of the product, I should say. So we would get hired by companies like The Economist or NBC, or you know, generally large media companies. This was actually in the financial crisis or coming out of it. And in retrospect, it was an immensely lucky place to be at that moment in time, although it didn't feel that way at the time. Because if you remember back then, if you were operating back then, if you're a media company, you're getting immense competition from these digital businesses, and your print business is in free fall. I mean, it's still a declining part of the business, and there was no capital available to bridge them. And so it was a case where their back was truly up against the wall, and they had to find a solution to compete with these digital companies. And they were willing to hire 20-somethings, like who are these people, to parachute in and teach them how to build great digital products. And that was our job. And so we would come in there, and you know, they'd have very large organizations and thousands of servers and all this IT, hand implemented DevOpsy hosting stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't work. Like it was, you know, they were struggling to iterate their products and build a competitive digital experience for their customers. And you know, what we helped them with wasn't our idea. It was just the obvious to us, the obvious idea, but at the time, and it was a revolutionary approach of DevOps, and it looked very different than hosting, right? It was, how do I get a team of designers and developers and publishers and marketers, all of that whole team across my business, to iterate together and to work together to build a great digital product? Because as you know, and I think a lot of the industry has figured out by now, you can't build a great digital product through one big bang launch, like a website relaunch.
Yeah.
Like, this is not how it's done.
The days of the past.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a recipe. If you think about like what goes into a website relaunch, it's just like, and now it's like, oh my God, we still do this. Like, oh, okay, so who cares about a website relaunch? Like literally the CEO down to the intern who sends it to their aunt, like work at this company. Everyone cares about your website. Everyone has a long list of requirements for this thing. There's all this angst because of all the problems that the product has that's been collected over the quarters. It's such a loaded project that people, because there's so much angst around it, people will not want to actually touch it because it feels like, oh, like there lies dragons. And so those things like collect. And then someone says, oh, I will relaunch the website. And then guess what happens? All that stuff comes out of the woodwork. And then you're set, most teams are set up for failure. I mean, it's a recipe for failure because it's like, okay, lock yourself in a room and solve all of our brand, all of our content, all of our technology and platform, challenges we've collected over the last X number of years in 12 months with this budget. Impossible.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And these teams were realizing that model it just wasn't working. Like it just could not get them to where they needed to go. And they didn't have all day long. Like they had to figure this out or their business was toast. And so we were, what we taught them was the modern approach to building great digital products, which is very DevOpsy, right? It's get together, get a workflow, work together every single day, improving your digital experience, like understanding where people are, you're losing them in the customer journey, and not waiting on it. Like, no, get your squad, get in the backlog and fix it. And so we specialized in the technology backbone as consultants to solve that, which they could not do on their own. And so literally after like the 10th time of doing this, they're like, oh my God, I'm so bored. And then the light bulb was, oh my God, media has this problem now, but every digital team in the entire world is going to realize they have this problem too. And there's no way we can solve this through DIY. There's no open source recipe or consulting approach. The only answer is software as a service. Like, just the only way to solve this problem at scale is to build really good, compelling software as a service products and platforms that actually solve it fundamentally for the industry. And so once we were like, oh my God, then we were, obsessed and have been, down that path ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so there's a couple aspects there, right? As I reflect further back than just this past year, but you said the word when we were talking before we started recording the show too, and you said it twice there, so it just stuck in my head now. Hosting, right? I grew up in the age of launching a website and setting up your hosting needs and all of that. And you told me, well, hosting's a dirty word. Talk to me a little bit more about that and what that means to you.
Yeah. So I think my first blog post I ever wrote when we launched Pantheon, launched our own website. The first blog post, or one of the first blog posts, I was like, it's like Pantheon's not a hosting service. It's like 2012 or something. I don't know. And what I meant by that back then, I think we didn't have the words back then, but now we hear a lot has happened since we built the product, and the way people think about this industry is really changing. What I mean by that is literally, who cares about hosting? Like, what marketer gets up goes to bed at night and gets in the morning, he's like, oh, content management and hosting. Like, that's my problem. I'm sure there's some, but no, that's not what marketers get up in the morning. What do they think about? They think about how can I increase my engagement, my time on site, my conversion rates, understand my user, get them a better experience. That's what they care about. Hosting is a solved problem for 20 years ago. Content management basically has been solved for a decade. We're somehow making it more complicated, but that's a side.
Yeah. Story. Yeah. Don't get me started on that path.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But hosting is for websites that do not change. Right? It's literally a technology from this. Sorry, I'm sounding like an old man now. I'm middle-aged. I've 2 kids, and I'm that
there
old
with
guy.
you.
But hosting is from the era of I have a server,
Mm-hmm.
Like, build me the application, burn it into a CD-ROM, put it in the mail. I will install it on your hosting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it is. Um, Websites change. They have to. If your website isn't changing all the time, you're done,
Yeah.
right? And hosting doesn't solve that,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need a whole collection of things to actually get a workflow that allows digital teams to collaborate, iterate, drive results.
Absolutely. And I think kind of going along with that, and you mentioned it as well, but how much the industry has continued to change even since you started Pantheon and kind of where you have grown into. So as we kind of look back on just kind of this past year, and I'd even say a couple of years now, right? We have seen that shift to you know age myself to right when I was setting up hosting back in the day. Right, spinning up a server and saying, "Here's your SFTP, and you can go drop your files there, and boom, you've got a website." To now where we have even seen, to your point, content management is also going away in a sense of the traditional way that it was a platform that you would use and publish through to now composable and headless and digital experience platforms, DXPs, and all the SaaS models that are out there now for different needs. And to your point, a marketer doesn't get up in the middle of the night or go to bed worrying about hosting. It's more about, all right, well, here's the next latest, greatest technology that lets me deliver an experience that hopefully converts my users or my, existing customers and keep them loyal. That's what they need to be able to work within. So kind of with this change in the industry, and as we look at all this aspect of especially composable, I would say is kind of the buzzword of 2022 for the majority of what I would say as buzzwords change and push forward, right? Being in the industry, we both know how fast those can come and go. But that is one that I think comes back to me when I was building my own computers, right? Of the plug and play concept of a PCI card and, graphics card. Oh, you just plug it and play. And here's your modem. You can plug and play and your network card. But in the sense of the digital marketing tools or the different frameworks that are available now, this composable aspect of we no longer have one entire system that has to change, but we have many different systems that you can find the right fit for your business. And it's composable where I can build that into the ecosystem that I have. How does all this translate into what Pantheon's providing, what you see in the industry as you kind of look backwards this year too, of just some of the direction that it's shifted?
I'm oftentimes accused of being a little skeptical or cynical, maybe even cynical over how kind of the analyst gobbledygook that we get in our industry. I don't know if all industries get analyst gobbledygook, but we get our fair share. I actually think composable is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a believer, and what it speaks to, and there's a lot of things kind of built into that framing. What it's this is reading between the tea leaves a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, but my view is what the industry's admitting is, hey, that whole thing we've been selling for 10 years, like one suite for all your marketing stuff, doesn't work.
Yep.
Doesn't. And all these customers who are there trying to, I mean, we talked about this uh, originally, like, here's how I think about it. Okay, you're a marketer and you need to drive revenue with your website. You need to hit your growth goals. Okay, let's sit down with a piece of paper and literally write out every single product you have to buy, build, and integrate to drive revenue with your website.
Mm-hmm.
It's a list of 30 things.
Yeah.
Hosting, CDN, New Relic, like performance application monitoring, security products. And then you're into version control and dev environments and deployment systems and caching and search indexes. And I mean, it's just like, and marketers want to pretend that stuff doesn't exist. They don't care,
Mm-hmm.
but you need them. And then, like, once you're through all that stuff, which is 20 tools, now you're finally into the world where marketers actually do care. Your CDP, your personalization routing system, your marketing automation, the MarTech,
Yeah.
right message, right person, right time.
Mm-hmm.
It's 30 products.
Yeah.
So what teams buy, build, and integrate 30 products to drive revenue with their website?
Mm-hmm.
Almost zero.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And what the industry, by industry I mean kind of the Gartner,
Mm-hmm.
Adobe, Sitecore world has been selling, and I understand why there's demand for it, a lot of demand for it. The only problem is it doesn't really work. Is just buy our suite. It's expensive, fine. Takes years to implement. Ouch, but it'll work. The challenge is it's really expensive. That's true. It takes years to implement. That's also true. It actually doesn't really work. Some of the things work, but do they really work the way you need them to? No. Like, what percentage of websites are truly personalized?
A very
Like,
low percent.
Yeah, like, and this is the thing about actually our CFO, Mark, made this point to me, like, oh my God, you're so right. Like, in advertising demand gen world, it's spooky what you can do. I mean, I'll say this, it's like, it is spooky. You can kind of read you know exactly who people are, you know what they're thinking, what they're buying, who they are, where they live, kids, no kids, golf, hobbies, TV channels. I mean, you can get all that data and you can get intent signals and all this AI modeling. It's spooky, right? You know everything about you, probably more than you know about yourself, right? And then you walk into our store virtually, which is the website. Hello, I'm here to buy something. Why are you on my website? You're here for a reason. You're either a customer or you're interested in becoming a customer. That's why you're on my website. Cool. Yeah. And I say two things to you. Like, who are you? And will you accept my cookies? I have no idea who you are. And I make you, manage your own customer journey. Go find in my nav where you want to go. Whether you're a customer or a prospect, whether you're like this close to buying, I have no idea. Go navigate. Good luck. That's so broken. The reason it's so broken, it's not because marketers don't get it. It's that it's impossible. Like, it's impossibly complex.
Yeah.
And I think what Composable is saying is to our industry is like, come on. Like, of course, this is how it's supposed to work. Go look at any other like evolved software industry today, whether that's sales software or marketing automation software or customer success software. And there's a pattern to actually make this stuff work. It's not easy, but there's a pattern, which is, you need to have an orchestration, a spine that orchestrates all of these things, probably does replace a number of them. Our view is like all that running your website stuff, the hosting and infrastructure and CDN, performance, security, compliance, all that stuff, just that has to go away. It needs to be solved. And then we think you need a spine like for the workflow. And by workflow, I mean like literally what are all the things you need to get a designer, developer, an agency, a head of IT, marketing, everyone involved on the website at the same table, working on the same work product, the visibility into literally like, okay, here's the new landing page. Does it look right? Is it compliant? Is it fast? Is it accessible? Okay, we pushed it out. The conversion rates go up.
Yeah.
Right. You need that workflow to actually literally work together as a team. And then once you have a SaaS way of running websites that you don't have to think about and carry page report, and you have a defined workflow for how these teams collaborate and work together, then you can actually solve these marketing challenges, which is around right message, right person, right time. Making sure the right customer in the journey gets put in the right part of that journey, and we can accelerate their purchase or the renewal or whatever we're trying to do with them. What's embedded in Composable are the values of SaaS, right? Composable means like literally I can compose it, which assumes it's SaaS, right? Composing does not mean like read my docs and install my software and configure that. No, Composable means like, boom, works.
Yep. Config a few things and it's up.
Yep. And that there's an API, right? So again, you're not like reading docs and hiring engineers to try to glue the thing into the thing, but no, boop, they fit together. Like that's the vision, I think, embedded in that. And by SaaS, I don't mean like all the web, like no development happens. We do development on websites, but I'm talking about all of the tools and platforms you need to do the work to create websites.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I love that you talk about how it's the things that you don't need to focus on anymore, right? And they're composable exactly to its name. You're composing what's needed. And what I like most about this approach is that you can grow in your maturity as an organization in your digital journey with the right tools at the right time because of Composable. And with the way that systems have worked in the past, where you have more of that all in one suite, the maturity of the different tools in the suite is what typically would start to limit the opportunities for organizations, right? The marketing team would be more advanced than what that tool had inside their suite, and so you ended up not using that feature, even though you're paying for it, and going with another third party that you then had to implement and integrate on top of it, which wasn't an easy feat. But now with Composable, in the way that a lot of the API driven elements are, especially with both SaaS and even if you're developing with other aspects, you get and I'll use the word loosely, but a freedom of choice to an extent of which systems you can now choose from. And to me, that's huge because now we can work with clients on our end, right? Of what's the right maturity level of a tool for you, because they may never need to go to that full end Cadillac model when all they really need is that simple Chevy Malibu. And it at least gets them there. But if they ever grew outside of that, they have the opportunity to bring in something else. And they're not stuck with an entire rebuild and a whole relaunch of everything like we talked about a little earlier. And so Composable to me has brought this freedom of you're not locked into one path and you're not locked into one element of you max out the maturity of that model and then you have to completely replace it. And that's a multi-year project. It's by the time you actually build it, the original goals of what you were trying to accomplish have changed within your business, most likely. And the way that people engage with you has changed because of how fast that experience is now driven by all the other players in the digital world and the expectations that consumers have, whether you're B2C or B2B. And so Composable to me is just a great way that we're going to grow forward. And at the same time, needing to have solutions that kind of take care of things behind the scenes so that you can focus on, to your point, what should a marketer focus on? What should a developer focus on, right? So I don't want to leave that group out. And they get the benefit of having tools in these solutions that let them go and just build what is needed.
I think exactly right. And I think what's changed since we started Pantheon is SaaS is working.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You people have experiences now, not universally, but there might be parts of the technology you're managing that still doesn't work. But you've had probably some experience where you, I don't know what, if you're in sales and marketing, you got Salesforce, you got Marketo or Pardot, you have like these pillars of your stack that work,
Mm-hmm.
that actually do deliver the value, that people can collaborate, they can work across functional teams. There's no pager. It literally and there's APIs, and it could be better, right? The Salesforce interface, everyone complains about, but fundamentally it works.
Yeah.
And it delivers the value to the organization that is promised. And I think what's happening now is what you're seeing via SaaS through all these other parts of your business, that's actually getting better and better and better over time. And what our industry has delivered through this broken model, I mean, honestly, it's like we're selling, this is like this old Siebel model of selling software from 20 years ago, where it's like, you're going to need Deloitte Digital, not to pick on Deloitte, did great work, but you're going to need this giant integrator firm for 3 years to re-platform your blah, 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 to your blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, it's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then like 4 years later, 2 times over budget, all the people left, except for the partner at the agency. It's like, come on, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, we know this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? We stopped doing this for almost all other software, but yet we're still doing this for our most important digital asset. Why is that? Right? So what's happening is SaaS is getting better and better, and that gap is getting more and more and more noticeable, to the point where analysts are saying this is busted. Like there has to be a better way of doing this. And I think that, exactly to your point, there are a lot of, I'm sure, people listening to this podcast, like, teams are figuring out, like, people have to do their jobs, and they'll slog through a lot of broken software and broken approaches to just get it done. And those, teams are seeing like hints of the future, parts of the web ops stack or the MarTech stack that are actually starting to plug together. They're saying, like, that's it. We need that, but for all of web.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had in one of our other conversations had a great comment about how both people in marketing and technical are making nonsensical trade-offs. And in the past, right, is it the marketing or the technical team that's going to win the conversation? And now they both can win, which is great. And,
Yeah.
to me, that's just a peace of mind that everyone should have on marketing or technical side, because you both can do your jobs. As you mentioned earlier, you can come in and do your job and find the tools that you need to do it. And they flow together now, versus a lot of times I remember lots of conversations in the past where I'd come into a client engagement for a project and it was IT versus marketing. Who is going to win? I'm referring to a children's book now, as I read one to my 6-year-old last night for, just the reptile ultimate battle. But anyways, I digress. As we look at just the aspect of, uh, the different mindsets that are out there, right? And customers, you kind of talked about this already, but I'm going to have a good customer experience. I'm going to have to make a good technology choice. What you're advocating and talking through is that you can now have both, and through that, it's really delivering on that customer experience, because we have these tools. And I want you to kind of unpack this a bit more, that Pantheon is providing, and taking the just complexity out of the complex, if that makes sense.
Totally. I mean, and we should talk about this. I'm a biker, so this is forgive me for this analogy, but you're on a road, right? And for me, I'm biking on the road, and there's someone coming driving their car, and I hit a pothole, and I go over head and over heels, and then I hit the car, and I'm not hurt, but
Mhm.
like not good, right? So I'm upset that I get hit by a car. The car's upset that someone swerved in the lane and like hit their car, and we have a conversation about it. And what often happens is those me and this driver are now not friendly, very not happy.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a great outcome, but like there's an easy case where we're blaming each other.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no one's at fault. It was a pothole.
Mhm.
And I think it's so easy to lose track of, like, because it's kind of boring. It's like, no, it's actually the infrastructure. And what I see is a kind of built up over many years standoff happening, oftentimes in organizations that look just like that, where marketing is saying, I have to move fast, I have to
Mhm.
hit my number, I have to iterate, I need to work with this team I found, I like, that's my job, I have to do this. And IT very rightly is saying, we cannot get hacked, the website cannot go down,
Mhm.
this cannot break, because my team carries the pager.
Yep.
And we're at war. And then things do break, right? So what happens when you have a security vulnerability, or the website does go down, or marketing does break things, like, then that happens, right?
Mhm.
Well, um that's really, to me, like, I actually am uh it's troubling to me. Like, that's a rampant thing in our industry, that and I get a little like personally sad about, like very deeply sad about, because these are people's jobs.
Mhm.
Like, you spend a lot of time at work. These are people's colleagues. These are relationships, and uh, and we're having these kind of standoffs, and sometimes, like, you know internal conflict um, over something that's totally solvable,
Mhm.
but becomes a personal conflict and shouldn't be. And the answer is, you need to have both.
Mhm.
The website can't go down and can't get hacked, and marketing needs to iterate. Both of those things have to be, and you can't compromise one or the other. You can't be like, if someone wins, guess who loses? The organization.
Yeah.
Right? That's just the reality. And so, what we find ourselves doing all the time, because we're in the middle of this as a vendor,
Mhm.
but we actually love it. It's kind of therapy. It's like, we walk in and we say, yes, absolutely. And then we walk to the other room to IT, oftentimes we're in the same room, and we go say, of course. And then we, like, literally get everyone in the same room. We're like,
Yeah.
guess what? Like, here's the path. And
Mhm.
everyone's like, wait, really? And we're like, yeah. And that's kind of the essence of a lot of our sales is like, look, like, with technology and good software and a good approach and alignment, you don't have to make those trade-offs. You just don't. You do have to build a plan and build a roadmap and get the right infrastructure in place. Like that stuff doesn't just happen. It's always people, process, teams.
Hmm.
Like any dysfunction, any missing capability in organization, people, process, and teams and the platform that they're running on, right?
Hmm.
That's it. And um, if you have one of those things and you're missing the other, you don't get the result. If you
Yeah.
have the right platform, the right technology, but you don't have the right team in place, or you have the team in place, the right product, but you don't know the process, the workflow, you're not going to get there. We think it's oftentimes our responsibility. Increasingly, is like we don't think of ourselves as we build a lot of software, we build a platform, but if our goal is to get the customer to the endpoint, which is the change of the organization, its ability to iterate and drive growth, then we're their partners to make sure that they have the right agency or they have the right they know the right path and the right process to follow. And good software makes that seamless and easy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you brought it back to the people, and the people are so important, and that therapy session I've been there and understand that too, because once you do get them talking together, it's incredible what the projects actually succeed, and how much happier those teams are at the end of the day, at the end of the project. And so to me, the critical thing there that you talked about also was the roadmap, because they need to have that plan of how to get there when they're not there yet. And there's still a lot of organizations that aren't there. They have not started it or are just beginning this process. And so there's light at the end of the tunnel, I like to tell people, and know that even though it might be that you've got to replace a lot of older, outdated systems and processes, even, there is a solution here in what's provided. And you definitely need to check out more with both Pantheon and just what's available to you today. Uh, it's amazing the industries that we work with are all across the board. And for me, having seen the pattern, especially in the past 2 years, just with the how fast the world was forced to change into a digital economy, and just experience becoming that much more important. The acceleration that especially B2B organizations were driven to, and how both a short-term band-aid solution was able to be applied for a lot of them, but now the long-term planning kind of also got accelerated, which to me is exciting because it's bringing so much more opportunity to them through that. Um, as we kind of think about just, what are the trends and moving ahead, and kind of looking to wrap up our session today, Zach, um, what do you see as, the upcoming trends? What have we learned, and what's coming in 2023 and beyond in your mind?
Yeah, I was just talking about this with uh, a friend who runs a company, not in website tech, but sells a lot to software to marketers, and another friend who runs a very large web team and digital team for a brand name company. And the conversation was like, basically we all said this is the same trend. We're just seeing it in different words, different parts of the industry, which is essentially the buyers of digital, people building digital experiences, and I mean that broadly, like on demand advertising, website owned, whatever, email market, people who own digital experiences. There's two types of buying happening. There is the traditional buying, which is optimizing for the technology, but technology mostly or only. And that's like, I got a set of requirements and there are a bunch of vendors and I got, I'm gonna stack rank and price. And I have these like levers I'm going to optimize and boom, I'm going to make the right decision. And there's like, I'm not knocking that, like you need to have that mindset. It's important. But there's a different kind of buying that's taking over. And it's a trend. And it's a empowered leader who has budget where the overriding thing is actually the customer experience.
Mhm.
Like they actually have authority and they have a mindset of my job is to improve the growth of our service or product. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to deliver a superior customer experience, whatever that takes. And I'm going to buy technology smartly. Like, it's like, I'm not going to buy everything because everyone, fixed resources and you got to optimize. And so I have an approach to buying technology, but it's in service to the customer experience. And what's happening is that's a reordering of it's a subtle but important thing. That's reordering everything. There are tons of downstream implications of that. That dictates which agency gets hired. That determines what products get purchased. That determines who gets promoted, who gets budget, who gets control over the team and the resources. And it's kind of getting into career advice, but that's a clear trend where we're like, it's a pendulum. It's gonna it's here, but you have to look ahead. Like, if you're planning your agency over the next 2 or 3 years, like, you don't want to be on the wrong side of this. You want to be on the right side of that. If you're planning your career over the next 2 or 3 years, like, you want to be on the team that their budget's growing, not the team that's being cost optimized.
Yeah.
If you're a vendor, like, you care a lot about that trend.
Absolutely. And the customer experience is so true of the impact that it has now because of just where we saw a lot of brands lose loyal purchasers in the past, just from availability, messaging, just the customer experience was broken with just some of the logistics and supply chain issues that happened over the past couple of years. And people went to just start finding it wherever they could. And it's tough for the businesses, right? And looking at just how I've talked about in the past, supporting some of the small businesses in my town during that time, it also is frustrating when you don't get messaging as a consumer until later. There's a lot of episodes I talked about a sofa purchase and waiting and messaging, and it kept delaying and delaying and delaying, and ended up with the same company, but going to their outlet store and finding almost the exact same thing that we wanted, slightly different, but we were willing to get it immediately because we had waited 7 months already. And customer service messaging just wasn't up to par with what I would have expected for a consumer with such a big purchase. And it's across the board, though, because any consumer now, whether you're a B2B consumer in the business space, buying services, to your point, or if you're buying goods as a B2C consumer, you have experiences that are set for you by so many different brands and digital websites or apps or whatever it may be, that if you aren't focusing on that as an organization, to your point, you are going to lose those consumers. You are going to lose those transactions, and you want to be part of that winning team. And the best way to do that is to be able to be flexible and to be able to come in and be able to have the right technology and tools to look to accomplish that and iterate on an ongoing basis. So, I know I've reserved a little bit. We talked a little bit about it here, but if you had to predict in the next 3 to 5 years, kind of, you talked a little bit about how Pantheon started as you were kind of doing these one-offs and solving this for organizations. And you kind of got to the point where you're like, man, this is the same thing. And what do we do to really, that light bulb moment? What do you think might be a future light bulb moment in the space as you guys look to just continue growing, and then also just where you see the industry going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, and this might not be a satisfactory answer. I think the things that change and get unlocked in, like, the light bulb moments, they don't happen all at once. You find an unlock, and it kind of is subtle, like a team in the organization or a project that you're working on, or one part of the digital experience that you're like, that's the future. Right? It just feels like the future. It feels easy. It feels like it's supposed to. And then what happens is, oh wow, that's it. So more of that, please. And those things get invested in. And that's the first turn of the crank. And then what happens? It's even better. And then you're like, oh, I want even more of that. And then so that becomes a flywheel.
Yeah.
And so that's not a one thing. That's a like generative thing. And what's happening is we have a lot of these seeds planted in organizations that are these mini little flywheels that feel a little bit like, you're like, that's the little pockets of the future dispersed in the organization. And the mistake people make is it's this classic, like, brains can't understand compounding. We just don't think, the brains just don't think that way. And so those things get really sneaky because they feel very small and subtle today. And you're like, well, that's, yes, but I got this big thing or budget or project or plan. So, but like pretty soon, those things end up being transformative. And, there's, I'm talking in the abstract, but like to, bring it down to size a little bit, this is, this played out in demand gen. Like demand gen works.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but like those teams work really well. Like the people buying ads and posting in social media and running email campaigns, like it's not perfect, but it actually really does work. You can map your customer journey. You can know where people are in the cycle. You can move people through the funnel. You can understand the conversion rate. It's all very agile and iterative. You get cross-functional teams. Like, holy crap, that is the future. It's just not evenly distributed. And the way this is going to play out, I think, in web and in our industry, is it's going to feel like a toy. It's going to feel like this little part that's like, it's working, which is great, and I'm very hopeful, but like, it's not it. And it happens elsewhere. And then that thing is just going to be super sneaky. It's just going to start exploding inside these organizations. And this is where I get down to advice. You want to be on those things. You want to champion them in organizations. You want to bring them into teams. You want to sell them if you're an agency into customers. If you're a leader in an organization, you want to nurture those things and care and feed them and give them space and oxygen. And then you just have to be a little patient because it's not like a silver bullet. It takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And even just the way you just explained it, right? You're planting the seed. You want to get these little mini flywheels. You don't need to have this big, huge aha moment. It's the lots of little moments that will lead you to that really being combined of all those little ones for the big. And it's a great way to wrap up the show today. Zack, I can't thank you enough for being on with us, talking through these trends and everything. For those of you listening, definitely please check out Pantheon and their SaaS platform, which really aids you in designing, innovating, and deploying websites and digital experiences fast. I can't stress that word enough. And it is the most reliable web ops platform with enterprise-grade security and customer support. So we'll put some links in the show notes and description so that you can go and check them out further. Zack, again, thank you for the time today to talk with us, and look forward to future conversations, maybe with some of the other Pantheon team members. You guys are two now in the show, and looking forward to future conversations as well. For those listening, thank you for tuning into the future by listening to this podcast of Lessons for Tomorrow. For more information about the topics discussed today, please check out the description of this episode. If you want us to cover a topic or submit feedback, email us at lessonsfortomorrow@americaneagle.com and let us know. Also, be sure to follow this podcast wherever you listen to them to stay up to date. And while you're at it, if you wouldn't mind giving us a rating and sharing this podcast with others to prepare them for the future. And also, where you sometimes find me, but seldomly not, don't forget to follow us on social media. This episode is brought to you by americaneagle.com studios. I'm your host, Tim Ahlenius, and I'll catch you in the next lesson.